So, hello everybody, and welcome to our next episode of Texas Calling. This is Andreas speaking, and with me is my good old friend
Daniel.
Daniel. Yeah. So, maybe he was swearing all the time because I just muted him during the intro. Didn't hear you, Daniel. So if you just were talking about something, I just be aware I muted you, so the recording is starting good.
Yeah, sure. It's cool.
So, and with our awesome planning, we found out a topic for today's episode, which was decided on like 1 minute ago. We would do because in the what is it pre-talkings we had a little talk about Sesame Street, and so we
And
decided.
Bobo.
And Bobo, I don't know Bobo. So we will do a little comparison about the childhood in Germany versus the US. So I have no idea how this works out, and obviously I don't have any. And it will also be a retro episode, obviously, at least for me, because my childhood is back in the 80s. So I cannot tell you how the childhood today is. When was your childhood, Daniel? So what is a rough estimation?
I mean, technically it started in the 70s, but it was the eight. I would say it's basically the explosion of the Challenger that made me aware that I was alive. Right. That was like the first real solid memory I can remember and also have a date around. Everything else was just a blur of like happy or sad or crying or whatever. It is when the Challenger blew up. That's when, oh,
Okay,
I know that date and I
when
remember it.
when were you born? If it's allowed to ask.
78.
78. So it took you nearly 10 years to be aware of something.
Yeah, I mean, let me test you. What were you thinking about when you were like 5 years old?
World domination, definitely.
Yeah, but it's probably just a blur of world domination, right?
Uh,
When was the first kind of pivotal memory you had? Okay.
that's a good question. What's the first?
Was it like the fall of the Berlin Wall? Was it?
No, for me it's hard to pick them or to put them in a date. I have a lot of memory flashbacks or whatever you want to call them of the childhood. It's not like I could tell you this is how I grew up. This was this, and I don't know. I know the fall of the Berlin Wall. Yes, definitely. That was a big topic, and I know that I was in school already there. So there was I was 9 years old at that time.
So this is
Eight or nine.
exactly what I'm talking about. Like, yeah, of course there's memories before the Challenger explosion, but they're all jumbled and stuff. Like the Challenger explosion is when basically continuity started for me, where I could like start to remember like, oh, this happened before or after, right? That's when the narrative begins, right?
Yeah, but that might also be just because it's such a like big event. So you have the first time you have an event that you can really tie into a date that you don't forget.
True,
So
true.
I can tell you, I had a great. That's strangely one of the memories I always have about my childhood. We had I don't even know what I think it was a birthday party in our backyard where we had like a little table and everybody was invited, and there were a lot of people I didn't really know. Because my mother just invited maybe it was directly after starting of school or stuff like that. So I have some strange memories, but it's I cannot put it into like this was this year or stuff like that.
Hmm.
So but let's see. That is quite interesting because I have really no idea. That's a big difference to all the topics we had before. Maybe that I always have an opinion about how the difference looks like.
Hmm.
And in this, I have no idea. I have no idea. Is it different? Is it the same? Is it? So when do you start with kindergarten or school in the U.S.? Let's start easy.
Think like age 4 or 5.
So that's kindergarten.
Yeah, yeah. But kindergarten is basically what you call the first year of school here, right? And you basically, as far as I can tell, there's school, and basically everything before then is kindergarten, right? It's just a garden of kids, right? Like in the American system, kindergarten is a grade, right? That's when school starts. And before then is pre-K, like pre-kindergarten, right? Which is when you're just getting your diapers changed and running around and, you know, singing songs and stuff. Like kindergarten is when, all right, education must start now. So
Really? Okay. What is
yeah,
the
so our
kind of
kindergarten is
education you
your
get?
Ersta, first grade. What? Do what?
What kind of education do you get in kindergarten in the US?
Counting, adding, subtracting. You know, basically everything my daughter is doing now. Right.
Okay. Okay.
Learning basic words, writing the alphabet.
Like I said, I cannot tell you how it is right now because I know there are a lot of changes in that direction. Also, regarding to when to start to learn the first foreign language, blah blah blah. All this stuff is obviously changing over time. You get new information, education systems change, all that. But back in my times, kindergarten was basically what you told before. I think it's also started with 4 or maybe 3. I'm not completely sure. And it was basically like organized playing. So you had somebody, the parents had somebody who is looking after the kids, and which was important for us at least because my mother was working part time all the time. And yeah, you played. Of course, you have educational parts, but it's more. It's not really educational, so nobody is teaching you something. It's more like reading books, like learning through playing. And I think the focus in the German kindergarten at that time was more about socialization. So basically, start to learn how to act in a group and with different persons. So
I mean, certainly there's some of that too, you know, in kindergarten. It's not like, you know, you're in kindergarten, it's like, all right, start preparing for your college entrance exams or anything like that, right? But definitely, I saw that there's a difference in the US versus Germany on what the term kindergarten means, right? So, for example, German kindergarten, one, it's optional, right? Second, it lasts multiple years, or it can, depending on how early you start. And 3, it is just basically, in some ways, just daycare, right? Like make sure your child doesn't, you know, stick his tongue in the steckdosa, right? But otherwise, go play, you know, go socialize, learn how to, you know, interact with other human beings, right? And that is pre-kindergarten for us. Kindergarten is, all right, to start a structure, starting to line up in lines, starting to learn the alphabet, numbers, our first grades, right? And I'm sure it's changed. Like, you know, like I just told you, it was a very, very long time ago, right?
okay.
But yeah,
In Germany,
kindergarten
that
was.
starts definitely. It depends. So that is basically what we call Grundschule. So that's the starting school. It has 4 years,
Yeah.
and it starts at the age either at 6 or 7. That depends on when you were born. There is a like a due date, and if everybody born before can join, and everybody after have to wait next year, so they are not too young. I was one of these kids that started with 6, but a lot of German kids starts at 7. So that's school. Then you do this 4 years. So I just run roughly through the German educational system.
Yeah.
Then you go 4 years to these basic education school, and then you have in Germany you have to choose. You have to then we call this weiterführende Schule. So you would say it's an advanced school then. And there you have to pick. There we have basically 4 options right now in Germany. You have the Hauptschule, which is just like I translate it very roughly right now, so don't try to. It's basically the main or general school, starting with class. What is it? I think 6. No, 5. 5. No, not 6. with with the class number 5. So 1, 2, 3, and 4 are the basic education. Then you have the advanced education in the main school system is from, and I think they go up to from class 5 to class 9, and then they have a finished. Normally, this is the line you take if you want to go into craftsman jobs or very easy jobs. and then you have the Realschule. I cannot translate that right now, and this is also going from, that depends. It can go up to class 9, or I guess also to class 10. That has something to do with switching, and this is normally like all these normal, like basic office jobs, and also like a craftsman's education. So it's much more
Practical school.
practical school, yeah. And then you have the Gymnasium, which is basically a preparation for studying afterwards. So that was what it was thought about when it was created. And that is going from the classes 6 to 13 if you go the whole way. You can also stop at 10, like in all the other schools, but then you are not allowed to study in Germany. You have to go and finish class 13 with tests and all these funny things. And if you have that, then you are allowed to go to a university and study. And I will stop there because that's not childhood anymore. So
Well,
that,
I mean, it's similar in the U.S., right? So basically, what you call Grundschule is elementary school, right? That's kindergarten, so 1 year of kindergarten through the 5th grade, and then you have middle school, which is 6, 7, and 8, and then you have high school, which is 9, 10, 11, and 12, right? So freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. Or you can just skip all that, get a GED, or
so you have
not get a GED.
you have 12 years. Like if you go to that before college, before all university stuff, like the maximum amount of school time you will have is 12 years.
Nah, 13, just like Germany, except we call our first year kindergarten.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
we just start a year sooner than you.
We have a concept like that as well. I think you can go to something that is called preschool, which is located between the kindergarten and school. So I think that is more similar to your way of putting it. And I think they start already there with some stuff. But I never went. So I want kindergarten, elementary school, and thank you for the word. Yeah, that's the correct translation, elementary school. And then I went to a gymnasium. So basically I went the academic route up till 13 years. But I never went to a university or a college, and that's also something that I would be interested in. I don't want to go too deep into that, but what would you say about your education, or back in your days? Maybe you have some insights on today. How likely is it that you, because that would, I mean that is basically similar to your high school degree. How likely is it that somebody without a high school degree in America is doing some meaningful work?
Depends on what field he goes into. I mean, let's say unless you're in a very kind of niche and specialized field, it's going to be a tough road for you, right? But the nice thing about America, and this is, in a future conversation about the American dream, some point I'll bring up, is you can get around the lack of certification if you show exceptional hustle or ability or anything, right? So, for example, let's say you never finished high school, but you're an amazing programmer, right? You probably won't be hired out of the gate at a place like Google or something, right? But let's say you start your own firm, or, work your way up through another firm. It's not like people will reject your resume out of hand. Well, I mean, some people will, but there's plenty of opportunities for you to just demonstrate your skill.
Yeah, okay, but you have to replace it. You have to replace the missing resume with some other resume in terms of like, yeah, I did it by myself, so I created my own company, or I have this project done and stuff like that. So it's basically invalidating your missing resume with something better.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we have that kind of also here because, like, just in comparison to job hiring, the later this gets, or the more the older you get, the less important the whole school degrees become. So, for example, I was searching for a job right now, and nobody asked me, of course, for my school. What's the word for Zeugnis? I always forget that. The
grades, transcripts.
Yeah, this is the letter you get at the end, where all the grades are listed on, like, this is how he passed.
Transcripts.
Yeah. So nobody asks for that. If you are trying to get. I think this is also a different concept in Germany than in the US. We have I think you just have these trainee or just hiring people, and then we have this thing what's called apprenticeship, so which is specifically for young persons coming out from school and they want to go to some job. Germany has standardized job profiles, and there are people inside the companies who are allowed and tested by not the government, but by the it's a commercial group, the IHK in Germany, and they tested these people, so they allow them to basically say, yes, you are capable of training newbies in, for example, computer development, or you are allowed to teach new persons how to run a bakery. And then you have a 3-year apprenticeship where you really learn that job, and then you also have tests, and it's split. So sometime you are in the office or at your workplace, and sometime you are in a school. So you get the theoretic part and you get the practical part and everything together. At the end, you write some tests and stuff, and if you pass those tests, you get a certificate that says, like, for example, you are a certified baker, or you are a certified Java developer.
Can you just take the test?
I don't think you can just take the test. There are possibilities to lower that time frame. For example, if you are jumping into that road, but you already have experience and stuff like that. I can remember one of the guys I worked with when I started my apprenticeship. He also was an apprentice, but he was like 30 years of age, and he had, just canceled his university on some way, and he said, like, but I want to have some degree in my pocket, basically. And he said, like, it's not that I really learned that much, but I want some official degree that I can show people. So he went also through that apprenticeship, and he had way less time spending there, and also personal spending there. And there are some ways around that to acknowledge some stuff like that, but the normal way would be like you went to school, like either 10 years or 13 years, because it's also common that the people that go the academic path, like me, so doing 30 years and are allowed to study now in Germany, but they say, like I said, nope, no way. 13 years of school is enough. I don't want to do something practical. I want to go into business. So it's quite normal in Germany. I don't know the exact rates, but a lot of these people are not going to university. They're just starting with a job, and they go into these apprenticeships times. So 3 or 2 years. You can also, if you know that you are very intelligent, you can talk to your employer and say, like, let's do that in 2 years. It's also possible. I was not one of those smart guys, but you can do that, and then you have basically a certificate that you are a good businessman, developer in certain fields, and this degree means something for other employers in Germany. So they basically know at least your overall level of education. They will not know, especially if, for example, if you say, like, I'm basically a developer, they don't know if you know React, they don't know if you know Java, or if you learn C# or VB6 or whatever. They don't know that, but they know that you know about the thinking process in development, what it's the components, and that you have UIs for doing that, and like the methods and stuff like that.
I think that's one of the differences, right? So the benefits, I think, and this is just an outside observation. I don't have any statistics to back this out, but I think in Germany they view school as, it's a certification of knowledge and experience, right? As opposed to the U.S., the value of education and your degrees is more in the infrastructure and network that you develop over there, right? Because it's certainly possible to become a lawyer in the U.S. just by passing the bar, right? Well, it differs from state to state, but at least in the states that I know, if you're smart enough to be able to do all the homework and studying yourself, learn the law, take the bar, pass the bar, then poof, you're a lawyer, right? Now, that's usually not very effective unless you're an extremely exceptional individual, because the value of going through law school is the connections you make with your professors and their networks and the alumni and your peers and the job fairs, et cetera, et cetera. So unless you're like Aaron Brockovich, right, there's just going out and getting the bar and becoming a lawyer poof is a pretty hard road to to travel, versus going through that system and getting indoctrinated and onboarded into your network. As opposed to like Germany, like, I think they put a lot of emphasis on, we're going to make you go through this Azubi program, so we ensure that, you have this body of knowledge. And I think employers treat that certification as that body of knowledge. As opposed in the US, I've hired a lot of people. They come to me with degrees that, says they know XYZ, but I don't think most people believe those degrees. It's like, yeah, you got the degree, but show me something practical you did, right? Show me a piece of code, or like give me some hard physical evidence that you actually can do the job versus some certificate that says you can, right?
Yeah, obviously we are doing that in Germany as well. So you don't get hired just because of a certificate, but it helps to figure out who's in what direction, and sometimes it says something about you beyond just the content of the stuff you learned. Just one example, because you picked it up. If you become, like, after the university here in Germany and you become a lawyer, even if you are a bad lawyer, which is possible still, every employer would know that you can learn a shit ton of stuff very quickly, for example, because that's basically one of the skills you earn when you do lawyer education. It's just like learning these books in and out and stuff. And that's also the other way. We have some university degrees that are quite, you would say, I don't know how this is structured in the US, but if you look at it in Germany, you would say, like, we'd sometimes make a joke out of that and say, like, this is a degree where you get basically your taxi driver license when you finish. Because there is no job that makes sense for you. For example, you study old Greek languages, or the Swahili tribe in whatever. You could do that. It's totally possible. But there's also a movement that a lot of these profiles are hired now in bigger companies for some special jobs, because not because they know so much about old Greek and stuff, but because of their mindset. Because why did they decide to do that? And how was the whole university structured around that? So they have a lot of, and also in Germany, especially now we're in the school system, but especially the university structure has changed a lot over the years. A lot. Like in the good old days, when my brother, for example, he went to university, it was a much freer space. So you don't have that much restrictions. You could basically study for 10 or 20 years if you were, if you know enough about the system, and just learn. And it was more important to form a character and to give people the time to self-study and to learn. So
if you made it to that level,
if you had to do the 13 years before and do your test, and then you have to get into the university, which is also, but this is a different topic. But nowadays it's much more like a school. Like with the introduction of so we also globalized our education. So we also have the bachelor and the master right now. So the reason behind that was to make these educational stuff a little bit more comparable, especially in the European Union. So if somebody from Great Britain, or that's a bad example, they're out now, but like, for example, France, went to a university in Paris, and he got a degree in global economics. Sometimes you didn't know in Germany what to do with that.
Yeah.
So, and therefore they did a little bit more standardizing this stuff, and now you have these bachelors and masters that everybody, even if you go to France now and say like I'm a international business master, they know a little bit, maybe not specific, but they know what you're doing or what you learned, and what's your field of experience and stuff like that. But that also led to a much more school-like system. So you have this, like, you have to be in the university, you have to be you have to do the tests on the right way. If you don't do the test, you are out. If you
Mm.
fail 3 tests overall, you are out in the same class, you're out, and stuff like that. There is a lot of complaining, or let's say debate around that, if it's good or bad, if the old way was better, the new way was better. So I'm not in that debate anymore because I'm out of that. But there are a lot of pros and cons to that whole.
Well, I mean, one thing that's my impression, and again, I'm not a scholar in this topic. This is just anecdotal or observational. But it seems like the German education system, a lot of the path that you can and are enabled to take is in the decision is in the hands of other people, right? So I won't mention who this is, but I was talking to, or I know somebody who's an older German female, and she's really, really smart. Wanted to become, let's say, a professional in the medical industry. But basically, since she came from a poor family and was in an industrial region and was a female, basically her counselor said, like, yeah, you should just become a housewife because that's all you're good for. And because of that, she was put on a track where she could never go to university or study, right? And so that's one of her regrets in life, right?
Yeah,
As
that.
opposed to the US system is
Oh, yeah,
you can
careful
kind
what
of
you say now.
no, and I'm gonna back this up with I guess more anecdotal and observational. Like you can kind of screw up and not make any kind of decision, maybe even well past the normal age. Let's say, like, I'll give you something that's completely plausible in the US. Like, let's say you're a high school dropout and you're living a hard life or like whatever, but maybe someday you have a cathartic moment and say, like, you know what? I'd like to become a doctor, right? So the first thing you should do then is get your GED, which is the general equivalency degree, which is basically a test that you take that says, okay, the bare minimum that you should learn out of a high school is this amount of knowledge. So if you pass that test, you have it. And then with that GED, you can, again, self study. And I'm not saying that this is easy because self studying is, especially if you have to get a job and pay for rent and, avoid the bullets and whatever, is very, very difficult. But if you do have the mental fortitude to be able to self study, and let's say you do take the SATs, and if your score is high enough, right, then you can gain admission into a university, right, at really no no matter what your age or your circumstances, or even if you ever went to school before, as long as you have that GED that says you know enough where, you know, it wouldn't be a complete waste of your time. And then the third hurdle, and again, I'm not saying that it's easy, right, or it's practical, but there is an avenue, is paying for that college, right? So you can either get scholarships or take out loans or just pay for the college yourself. So, you know, so basically for most colleges, like, if you have the basic certification, if you have the test scores, and if you have the money somehow, you can get in, right? And so it's very, I think it's, and again, this is anecdotal, but I think it's easier in the US to change your track, or at least there are options, versus in Germany. I find it so strange that at such a young age you have to decide whether you're going to gymnasium or the Realschule or the Hauptschule and stuff, right? Because like
Mhm.
if I think back to like when I was that age, you know, I don't know. I might be like a plumber right now or something. Not that that's bad. Plumbers are very useful, make a lot of money. They're great. I don't mean
Oh, they're
to
making a
say that
shit
as a
ton of money.
pejorative.
They're making a
Yeah.
shit ton of money in Germany right now. So if some younger folks are listening, go into a craftsman's job right now is maybe a really good idea. It's,
Well, software engineering is also, I would say, a craftsman's type of.
everybody's doing software. Just also anecdotal. I have a friend, basically over my brother, and he started in, like, you would say, if you would be like a little bit not so nice, you would say it's a plumber. I think he is much richer than I know. He owns a lot of, or he has some flats and stuff. So also he has always the advantage, if he buys a flat, he can renovate it by himself. And I'm in the tech industry, we are notoriously bad at doing stuff ourselves. If it's going to like real work, it's also not true for everybody, of course, but.
I mean, not to get off topic, there's nothing that prevents you from doing this yourself also, right? You also can own real estate, and you also could work on the real estate. It just takes a few YouTube videos, right? Not to invalidate a whole profession and stuff, right? But most of the problems
That's exactly what
yourself.
You did. It's like,
well, I mean, that's
just
true
watch some
profession,
YouTube video,
right? I mean, I think in most professions, you can kind of do 70% of the work just by watching YouTube videos. Where the education experience come into place is the rest when exceptional circumstances come out. And where you pay a master is for the 1% situations where, is truly exceptional, right? But most of the time, right?
Let's not dig into that.
It's basically identify the problem, right? And then tighten some screws, right? And that's the same thing with software as well, right? For most of the things that software engineers have to do on a day-to-day basis, they basically just need a programming 101 course, right? Where the experience matter is that basically 30% of the time when that's not sufficient.
Oh, I will not. I will not speak about that right now. That's. But maybe it's another interesting topic. But also in what you said before, there is to quote another person, there's so many things to unpack here. So first of all, we have to split this up in opportunities in raising through the ranks, which is actually a topic in Germany right now.
Yeah.
But first of all,
what do you mean by raising through the ranks? First of all,
yeah, raising through the ranks in terms of like, or switching professions, or like getting
social
to the
mobility.
next level and go to who's able to go to university. Basically what you said, the lady that was not able to do that because somebody else set her path. So we have to unpack a lot of things here. First, your first example, I think that's the social part. And yeah, maybe I will fight against your utopic view of America again here, but I guess this situation, you can ask a lot of American women. They will have the same experience if you go to the right time period. They say like, I think there are even movies about women fighting to get into, especially these mass
sure,
or stuff like that,
absolutely.
because people tell them like, you could be a good housewife and you shouldn't study. That's inappropriate for you. So, but that's a social component that I wouldn't say is really determined by the school system. It's more a societal problem. So, are you allowed to do this stuff? What you're talking about, these making other people decision for you, this is actually a thing, and especially in combination with what you told before, these early decisions. That's actually true, because basically you have this 4 years in elementary schools, and I went through that too. Then you have your parents will have a talk with your main teacher. So you get over this 4 years, you get one main teacher that is doing like 60 or 80% of the school hours with you. So he knows you very well from a knowledge standpoint, but also from a behavioral and mindset standpoint. And he will, or he or she, both possible, For me, it was a lady, and she had a talk with my mother and my father at in basically when you are about to degree from the fourth grade,
Hmm.
and then they will together decide. That also changed. In my age, it was really a decision that was made together. In
Hmm.
which line, like these schools, Hauptschule, Realschule, or Gymnasium, you are going to go.
Hmm.
And this was a discussion, but of course, the teacher has recommendation, like we call it.
Hmm.
They have a recommendation, say like, yeah, and I'm a good example because my recommendation was split.
Hmm.
They told my parents like, yeah, we believe he would be capable of doing the gymnasium, but we are also believing that his grades will drop. So
Hmm.
if you go to gymnasium, this will be a very there is a huge gap in what they demand of you from elementary school to there. So and some people just they are not capable of doing that. And they get
Hmm.
sorted out, like you said, then maybe too early because they just are not able to do that jump. And they were afraid that this could be the case for me. And so she gave a restricted recommendation. So it said like, okay, if you want, you can send your son to the gymnasium, but I would also consider sending him to the lower tier, one
Hmm.
tier lower, so not the lowest, but the middle class school. And the idea behind this was because it is not that you are fixed in that line. If you that's what I talked before, because you can also do this 10th grade, so you get your a degree with if you get good enough grades, so you can go to a gymnasium afterwards. So you basically switch the line after this and go from Realschule after the 10th grade, and you have good enough grades, then you go to the you would call it then senior part, like 10, 11, and 11, 12, and 30 on a gymnasium
Hmm.
and get your degree there. So this is possible. You can also switch. So you can switch through the tiers. You can go from the lower to the middle tier, and then from the middle. So basically, it is possible that somebody who is sorted into the lower tier is ending up to be a lawyer. That is possible.
Hmm.
It is also very common in the middle to the upper tier. It's not so common in the lower. You if you raise up, you normally raise up one tier.
Hmm.
So you go through all three. It's very uncommon. But yeah, there is a huge debate in Germany, and there are different belief systems about this. Is this smart to segregate the people at that young age? So we have
Hmm.
another school system, which is called the Gesamtschule, which
Hmm.
is more like the American system. So basically, you put everybody together and then you sort a little different.
Afterwards.
Yeah, not
Yeah.
only you also in between you have different classes. So you have, for example, you have math A and B classes. So and if your grades are qualifying you for the A class, you can go to the A class. And if you're not qualifying for that, you're going to the B class, but still in the same system. So it's more inside. So you could still be for example, a biologic genius, and there you are in the A class, but math is not your thing, so you are in the C class there.
Hmm.
That's possible, and then in the end, you can decide, but you can still also on that school you are possible to get a degree that allows you to go to the university and stuff like that. And we also have a little bit different university. So we have the university and we have things called like higher educational schools that work like universities but are a little bit they're not that academic. They're also a little bit more practical. So you can go there. For example, what we could do is you could do the middle tier degree
Hmm.
and then you start a job. So you do this 3 years apprentice, for example, to learn a basic businessman role.
Hmm.
And if you have done that, you could also go to that university, special universities, in these combinations, and then you are allowed to study um, job profiles or educational systems in that area, like
Yeah.
business.
Well, yeah, certainly I didn't mean to imply that there's no flexibility in the German system. After all, my wife is in college again, now, and she's not a spring chicken anymore either, right? So,
Yeah, but it's also
the,
things you can still you can go back to school every time.
yeah.
It doesn't depend. So even I think your wife had an abitur, so basically she went to gymnasiums for 13 years, then she went to a job, and now she said like I want to do something higher level, so I also want to study now. but you
She
can.
had a degree, but it was a very, very specialized degree, right? So it was related to her job in the Zoll, right? So she learned a lot of things that was specific to the Zoll and the Finanzamt, right? And so one of the reasons why she wants to go back to university is she wants a little bit more globally relevant skill set, right?
Mm,
Because like honestly, if we move back into the US or something and she goes to an employer and said like, yeah, I can tell you everything you want to know about, you know, European Union, energy taxation laws. They'll be like, well, there's the burger machine is over there, there's the deep fryer, and here's where you refill the drinks. Right.
yeah. No, but like, it is possible in Germany. But what I have to give you, and what I totally believe is true, and therefore it's also this huge debate in Germany about that, is like, is it smart, this segregation? You have to become a little bit more politic, like the more conservative persons, like it is in their name. They are more like preserving what was in the past. So
Mm-hmm.
they are more pro these old school system. But you also have a more progressive persons who said we have to rethink education at all, like how we do education, front education, group education, one teacher, two teachers in one room, and how much do you do front teaching, how much
Mm-hmm.
is group work, how much is self-study, and like it is like everything in the world, it's under constant review, and there's new ideologies, new ideas, but it's a really broad discussion, especially about the segregation. So that was
Mm-hmm.
because this Gesamtschulen came up, and I think they get a lot of traction in the past years. So a lot of people went there. In the beginning, they were a little bit blamed, like the easier school.
Mm-hmm.
But I think nowadays it's quite normal that like nearly every bigger town has one of these schools also, and so like, yeah, that's also an option you can take. Um,
I mean, to bring it down on a personal level, what do you think about your childhood in Germany and especially school? Did you learn a lot? Is it your best memories?
it's very I you know what I compare it most to nowadays, that it's always backwards, of course,
Mm-hmm.
but I compare it a lot to the military.
Mm-hmm.
It is a lot of fun if you're done with it. If you look back at it, there's so many great stuff, and I think that's not even like, yeah, connected to school. I think that's the same experience that American youth and German youth would have. It's just great to hang out with people. So it's
Mm-hmm.
basically your first social group. You don't choose that group; you get thrown into that group. So as a total capitalist, you would say it's your first workplace.
Mm-hmm.
So and you learn a lot about that, but it also has a lot of good things. So I had a lot of good friends in that time. You hang out so many hours, so it's so easy to keep in touch, to organize stuff. And also I think that's a little bit different in Germany and the US in terms of time frame. But in Germany, in my time, I think it's also changing now, but in my time you basically had a shit ton of free time. So
Mm-hmm.
normal, even in the later years, normally the school is starting at 8 o'clock in the morning, and it is going in Germany, like in my times it was 1, what is it then, PM, 1 p.m., 20 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So basically half of the day is free. Of course you get a lot of homework, you should do homework stuff, and but yeah, you know how this works. I think that's not
Yeah.
different in the US and in Germany. You have a lot of free
Actually, that's
time.
very different. That's very different.
No,
That's
I mean
another
in
thing that
terms
I
of
noticed.
homework. Doing it
Oh
or
yeah,
not.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
No, but I know you have, but you can maybe you can tell a little bit about that. I know the American system is a little bit more towards staying in school and having like after school collaboration and events, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, so in high school, when I did go to school, right, because I would skip school a lot, but you know, um, I catch the bus to school about 6:30 in the morning. I went to a math and science academy, right? So the bus ride was a little bit long. It was about an hour bus ride, right? So basically, school starts at 7:30. Um, we had basically per year 7 or 8 subjects, right? That we had to study for, and then the official school would end about, let's say, 6 o'clock, and then we would go into after school activities like a lot of the sports clubs, which were part of your class, right? So you need a certain amount of PE credits, and this is going to differ from state to state. Obviously, I grew up in Texas, so this is kind of how the Texas Board of Education is structured, right? So you need a certain amount of physical education credits. So you would take a course like cross country running or something, and so after school, in order to earn your credit, you could go do your runs with the whole group, and you participate in competitions. And then usually about 7:30 is kind of your own time. So then you would go off with your friends, do some homework together, maybe get some dinner together, um, and get home about 9:30 or so. So that was my typical high school day.
Okay, that's um,
It was really long.
it's
It was
later
really
than
long.
I thought.
Yeah. And I don't know how typical exactly my experience was, because I did go to a math and science academy, right? So you had a lot of, let's say, type A students who wanted to get ahead by taking as many extracurricular activities as possible, right? So there was definitely a social pressure to involve yourself into, different social groups and after school
Mm.
activities,
How
right? So, for example, I was in the Mexican American Culture Club, so I would learn about Uvas No and Cesar Chavez and La Raza and Mexican American relationships, and all that kind of stuff. And part of the reason why is eventually when you would go apply for college, in 4 years or whatever, you'd want to write about how you demonstrated your leadership by being a part of the Mexican American Culture Club or the Asian American Culture Club or
Mm.
the chess club or cross country or wrestling or any of these, immense amount of extracurricular activities that you would do, right?
Yeah, that would be also my question because like a lot of my knowledge about that is coming from obviously the best source of American culture, which is Hollywood movies.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Dazed
so
and Confused.
and there this is always a topic. So especially if these people go to college and university, you always have to write this essay, which is always like for the heroine in these movies is always like this awesome thing how they learned something and changed, blah blah.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
also like these extracurricular activities are always so important. Is that really the case in American universities, or is this like over exaggerated by Hollywood?
I think it depends on the college you apply to, but definitely in my case, it was definitely.
So you talked about Mexican culture in your. You went to, by
Oh,
the way,
yeah.
you went to Texas University at in Austin. So
That's right. That's right. Yeah, I definitely had to write I had to write an essay to get into my high school, actually. Right. So, like I said, I went to a math and science academy, which you have to apply for, and even there, I had to demonstrate test scores. In my case, the PSATs, the pre-SATs. Um, write several essays on why they should accept you. Um, point to your extracurricular activities and why you are a future leader in the making and they should invest their time into you. So
okay,
yeah,
so
absolutely, definitely.
that's a huge difference. For example, like when you talked before about like raising through that and the possibilities of that, and that it's that's for example. You can have different opinion on that, but it's different in Germany. So here you basically have to do nothing of that. The only place where this starts, and we're talking about the public school system, which is basically like 99% of German school system. We also have private schools. Yes, we have them in Germany, but they. I also don't want to say something wrong here, but they don't really matter that much. It's more a
Mm.
very elite way of persons segregating themselves, but it's not that huge amount. So the normal way, and it's like at least 90%, is you go to a public school in Germany, and which is, I don't know exactly the rules right now, how you can get into that school. And mostly it's a big debate about an elementary school. I think this is regional, so
Hmm.
next school in your region, but you also have possibility of picking there. And the better schools normally it's also region. It's you can also go now. We had persons who went to the next city to go to this school because of different opinions about schools, and they have
Hmm.
a more special, like you went to a mass school that was specialized in that area. We have that here as well, more, but this is more based on reputation because everybody is teaching you the same, yeah, at least basic school system, so that is standardized.
I mean, just to put it out there, it was a math and science academy, but it was still a public school, right? It was just
Yeah, then that's a big
a
difference.
public, yeah.
You would never have to do that here in Germany because it's basically, also that sounds like a little bit bad right now, but it's your right to get into that school. It's not something you have to ask for that the school allows you in. It's just like, no, they have to take you because that's the public educational system. And to put it positive, you are the customer and you can choose. You have the freedom of choice, which I knew that Americans hate so much.
Well, I mean, you're absolutely right. School is a right, paid through, in the case of Texas, property taxes, right? But it's not your right to go to the school of your choosing, right? The school that you get assigned to um, is typically based on the neighborhoods where you live, um, except in the case of magnet schools, which anyone can apply to get into, no matter where in the city that you live. But you need to get into them. You need to show an aptitude. And I think most large American cities have some form of magnet program. At least the top
Mm.
school districts do.
Yeah, that's one thing that I would point out is a huge huge difference, and also like I said, I think especially it gets a little bit more and more the older you get and the farther you are into the school system. So then also your days get longer, but
Hmm.
especially in the beginning, it is they start slowly. So it's very
Hmm.
they have a lot of focus on giving children their free time. And again, like I said, in my age, also that is a huge debate right now in Germany because that seemed to have changed, and a lot of these children gets a lot of more pressure onto them. I think also a lot of because parents. I think that's another issue in America as well. They're putting a lot of pressure on the kids, and like these helicopter parents. I don't know if that word is also used in English. They just
Yeah, it's a
basically,
bit pejorative, but yeah.
yeah, but they just plan everything, and they like you have these parents here in Germany like meeting at the children's playground, and then like, oh, my child is speaking two languages already, and then the other one is like, miss, why is mine not speaking two languages? No, she has to start with Spanish.
Hmm.
And stuff like that. That become more and more, but the basic idea was also always to give these kids the free time they need to just be kids. So like, playing around, running around in nature, and doing their own experience basically. So a lot of German schools in my days, they offered a little bit of after school program. So we called that work groups. But they were not mandatory. So you could sign in for that if you, for example, were into football or soccer, as you call it. You could go to a soccer club maybe, and that also depended on the school and on the teachers how much of these they offered. And so at my school we don't have much of them. Not
So
really.
that used to be my belief as well, that you need to give room for your kids just to be kids. But I think the German school system is slowly turning me away from that. And and the reason why is when I was my daughter's age, I could do my multiplication tables, at least 10 by 10 multiplication tables. Basically, she didn't learn anything in kindergarten. She barely knows how to do simple addition or subtraction, right? She still has to count the fingers on her chin. And I was just like, thinking, like, okay, I gave you a lot of time just to be a kid, right? And what did you do with that time?
So you're
You
on the
didn't,
best way to
didn't do
become
anything.
Or what is it called in your tiger parent or tiger mom or tiger dad, right?
Really not. Really not.
So, but you also
But
have to take into consideration like you are full Asian breed. So the mass is strong in you, but your daughter is half German. So
yo, Germany is supposed to be a country of engineers. You need
yeah,
math for engineering.
I bring you the bad news. We suck at math. We have some eggheads who are really good at that. So we have our own German Asia breed, I guess. But like the broad majority is really bad at math and don't like it.
I'm
And
not wait, I'm not talking about advanced math. I'm talking about the basics of using money,
it has to
right?
start somewhere. So you start to suck for very early to be bad later on. You cannot.
Like I want to give my daughter an allowance so she can express her individuality and freedom through the power of consumerism, right? But I can't give her any money because she can't count. She can't like, like, oh, you have 5 euros. This Barbie magazine costs 3 euros. How much change should you get back?
How
Right?
long
She
is she in
can't do
school
that
now?
basic. Hmm,
Was it
good
4
question.
months?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, because like basically what you are telling about like the basic math operations, reading and writing is basically the content of the first grade in Germany.
Yeah. And in the US, it's content of kindergarten.
Yeah, so just relax, old man, and don't fuck up your daughter.
You know what? I went through this program and I had this, I like, so what does she spend her time with kid being a kid? Well, she draws a lot. When I was a kid, I could draw really well also, right? So,
So basically, you
mm,
are really that conservative guy. So like you said, like I did it in my past, it was great.
I never said I wasn't conservative. I'm just saying when I was her age, I could do multiplication, right?
Yeah, but that's exactly this point where the helicopter parroting starts because that's exactly like I said, like my kid speaks this language and it starts very early. Like I could walk with one and he's walking with 1.5. Maybe he's falling behind and he will.
I do worry about her falling behind. On the other hand, I think she's also doing really, really well because what I wasn't doing at her age was speaking English fluently and speaking German fluently at the same time. She still has a little bit of difficulties um, reading in both languages because it's very confusing when she sees the English E or the American E and I and vowels, and they sound different than the German,
Yeah,
vowels and also the umlauts, the Siebenkönigen and stuff like that.
yeah, but
Where I can't help her,
to be,
with her
to be
homework.
fair with your daughter, you have also very much trouble reading in German.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I'm saying. I can't help her with her homework. Like sometimes she takes her German homework to me. Is like, you know, what is this? Is this an O umlaut or a U umlaut? And I basically do like, you know, shrug face, and I'll be like, ask your mother.
You could say she should call Uncle Andy and he can help her with the German homework.
Really?
Sure. I just the only thing I can't do is spelling. I will fuck up, but I'm quite comfortable with getting first grade stuff right.
Oh, like I mean, I actually what she's doing now is spelling, right? So they show her a picture. I don't know of I don't know some picture of something, and it usually involves a umlaut somewhere, and then she has to spell the word by sounding it out. It's like, ooh, that's an ooh or an like I can't help her, right? Because I don't. First of all, I don't know what the word is. It's like
Right?
I don't know, baby. That's a picture of a tiger. Like spell tiger, Tiger, right? It wasn't a tiger, but you know. And
No,
then
it was a
secondly, even if I
lion.
did know even if I did know the German word,
Löwe.
I don't know how the vowels sound, like Löwe,
Löwe.
Löwe.
Yeah. But
So if you asked me like, how do you spell Löwe, and if I didn't know better, I know how to spell Löwe now. But before I came to Germany, you asked me, how do you spell Löwe? I would have been like, I don't know, Luva, Luva, Luva. So
yeah, but I find that very funny. I'm in the comfortable position to not have children, so I don't have to go through that. But just a side story, because I think and it's also I like it. It's funny how um, obviously parents all over the world are a little bit the same, because in Germany they changed the way. When I was young, we had a different way of learning reading and writing, especially writing, than they have nowadays. And I think currently they are again switching it back, because they tested it and it seemed not to work that good, and or enough people protested. But the funny part about that is, in my age, it was very conservative. You had to do the right.
Yeah.
Spelling checks. That was a huge part of my German education.
Mhm.
In the beginning was like just writing spelling tests and like, you did a mistake here and stuff. So you just learned how to do stuff right. And at some point they switched, said like, okay, that is actually blocking the children, because they're afraid of doing mistakes, and so they are not expressing themselves like how they would if they would not be having that fear. And they changed that, and then they introduced something that's called like writing like you hear it. So basically, I think it was still in the first grade, they could write a lot of stuff like they think it sounds, which obviously was wrong in terms of spelling. But you can still read it. You understand what they mean a lot of times. And the teacher didn't correct them because they wanted to enforce that they first of all express themselves and then afterwards learn, okay, now you express yourself, but let's write that correctly. So they started later with that. And that went wild with the parents. Because obviously none of the parents learned it that way, so it was totally
That's right.
false. And everybody was like, no, back in my days you did it this way, you wrote tests, and everybody of us could write in the second degree, everybody wrote the right thing. And today's fall apart of society is because of this, because people cannot read and write anymore because they learned this shit in school. So
I think I agree with those parents. I totally agree with those parents.
Yeah, exactly. And it was a huge, and a lot of the teacher couldn't do their work. I will not take a position here if it's good or bad. I don't know. But what I know, and that's also from my job perspective, is that you have to be open to things like that, and that new ideas can push you forward. If we always stuck with the old ideas that has been done since 20, 30, 500 years, then we would missed out some very good
But I
evolution.
think that also, so that strategy, yes, I totally agree in some cases. But in the case of my daughter, it totally underestimates her laziness for learning if she can get away with something, right? And so she's getting all correct marks on terms of her German spelling, but the way she gets around that, because it's, again, I can't help her with the German umlauts or vowels really, and she can't hear them really well, is she just doesn't write the vowels at all. So all of her spellings are just the consonants, right? So like, I don't know, pick a word like lova. She'll just write LV, right? Or LW, I mean, right? It's like, and then she'll get a correct mark on that. It's like, well, the sounds are there. She's just missing the vowels. It's like, yeah, that means it's wrong, right? How is she ever going to learn how to spell it right if you don't say like, yo, this is wrong. This is how you can correct it, right?
You know what my grandparents would say about getting rid of the laziness of your daughter? Like the right educational tool will be hitting her with a stick.
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't believe in that, but that's definitely how I was educated. I mean, yeah. I mean, you've met my mother. She's a sweet little old lady, but she definitely wielded a stick on me several times. And I don't believe that in children, you know. So I need to try more carrots, right? So basically my mechanism is like, yo, if you get all this right, then you can go buy a magazine at the newsstand, you know, or we can buy a movie off of Amazon Prime or something, right? So
Yeah, so you see, there are different ways of motivation, and yeah, you should try them all. Or no, not them all. That don't use the stick. Don't use the stick.
I mean, you could use a metaphorical stick, like, you know, I threatened her to like remove her, you know, privilege, which I call it, a privilege to listen to audio CDs before bed, right? Because she has all these like CDs of I don't know, not Bobo. She's outgrown Bobo, but I don't know, Princess Lily Faye and BB and Tina and stuff like that. It's like, yo,
Yes.
if you don't do your homework, I'm gonna take your BB and Tina CDs away. Right? So there is a stick.
Yeah,
Right?
but that
Just
honestly, there are problems of every parents and every age. Like because children always would like to do something different than their homework. And if you
yeah, yeah.
remember back in your times, I have a very
Oh, I got
lazy
beat.
attitude, and I had a basically like the whole 11th grade
Hmm.
in my part was for personal purposes. I'm really surprised that I get a degree at the end of school. But the 11th grade was
Yeah.
like, I think I'm on some point I got into an argument with my teacher, and she said like, if you don't show up at least 1 or 2 days here, then you just get out of school because of unattendance. So
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I think I spent my entire 11th grade stoned, just completely just stoned.
yeah, so I think you can give your daughter another month or two for reading.
No, I'm actually like, if she wants to experiment with some like, recreational marijuana, that's cool. Like, I did.
But she
she
has
ended up
to
in
know how
11th
to
grade,
spell.
so yes, you have to know how to spell. You have to know how to like use money. You have to know how to count, right? Those are non-negotiable, right?
If you can spell Mariana, you can smoke it. Okay,
I
so
mean, yes, I'm not freaking out worried, but I am concerned enough where like every week I go onto Amazon and purchase another supplementary workbook, like, teach your kids how to do math.
I
Those
love that.
workbooks work, right?
Yeah, it's
Like,
awesome.
I bought one for reading, right? Because if you remember, I was like really concerned that she had no interest in reading at all, right? So I bought some workbooks for reading, and she reads actually really, really well, right?
Yeah, I,
Now,
I love
after
that.
working through with the workbook.
That's just my 2 cents for the end of this podcast because we already hit the limit again. But this is just my 2 cents, and this is just my external view, not on Americans, not on Germans, but on parents. I
Mm-hmm.
experienced that with my brother when he, or better, his wife got a child. I see this in you and also in other colleagues or friends who have children, and I can look at that externally because I'm not into this, and it's funny. It is really funny how some people react on some stuff that would maybe totally different. They would react totally different in a work environment because they have different beliefs there, and if it comes to this situation, they are so much the same. I can remember because you're talking about books. That's the last story I will tell. I can remember when my brother and his wife is a little bit older than him, so she was in. I wouldn't say now she wasn't old, but she wasn't quite an age for children. So it was maybe a little bit of a late parenthood.
Here's a geriatric pregnancy.
Yeah, not that much, but she was always. It's not the typical like 20, mid 20, or I think she was over 30 at that age already.
Yeah, that's like my wife with her twins. It was considered a geriatric pregnancy. Like,
Okay, I know the term
like,
geriatric only with my mother, who is like 70 and old. But okay,
yeah, I mean the term evokes like really, really old people, but I think what it means is just you got heightened risk of certain factors.
yeah, and
So,
what they did as well was like they had a whole bookshelf with all these funny books about how to raise children, and
mhm.
it was just like maybe it's also easy for me to get advice. It's like, man, there were people like they basically lived in under rocks and they could raise their children. So don't make that big fuss out of it and just do your stuff.
Whatever.
Just
You're recording this podcast, right?
yeah, and we will stop. So you have the last words now.
All right. My last words is I have you on record that my daughter can Zoom you to help her with the Siebens Königin. Right. So
Yeah, let's see how that works
I've
out.
got this. I've got this on record now. It's streamed live to Fabian. I'll call him as a witness. Yeah. So be expecting a Zoom invitation.
Okay, then yeah. With that words, the topic of today was childhood. I think we didn't really hit that topic. It was more the educational system. So I will rename that episode later on. But so we have another topic, childhood, that we can come back to more in the private sense.
Yeah.
So everybody, thank you for listening in and who's hearing that, maybe on the way to work. So
Yeah.
we'll come back with another topic. We are not done yet. Thank you for your time.